neighbors, thank you for joining us here at Montclair Presbyterian Church for this teach-in on the subject of our ceasefire strategy, our city's ceasefire strategy. The ceasefire program in Oakland I actually don't know when it started, but I do know that I came to serve as pastor of Montclair Presbyterian Church in 2014, and it was already happening. We were already doing the ceasefire program 11 years ago, and our congregation has been part of the ceasefire program since at least 2014, because the congregation was already a part of it when I got here. And one of the things that I have really liked about the ceasefire program is that it has helped to connect our congregation here in the hills with other congregations in Oakland, and it has made this connection by unifying us around a common cause. And that common cause is a desire to live in a safer city, a city where all God's children can walk on the streets and be safe. And I have really appreciated that opportunity to get to know folks from different congregations and different neighborhoods within Oakland. So as we gather today for this teach-in, my prayer, because I am a pastor, my prayer is that we will all be blessed with a spirit of neighborliness, with a spirit of kindness, with a spirit of community, and with a deep sense of peace that comes to us as a gift of grace. So again, welcome to this teach-in here at Montclair Presbyterian Church, and I would like now to invite Quetzali Berumen to come up and lead us in a land acknowledgement. Quetzali?
Good afternoon. I'm Quetzali Berumen. I've had the privilege to intern at the mayor's office, and I'll be offering the land acknowledgement. Let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. It is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we stand, but also we recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are flourishing members of the Oakland and broader Bay Area community. Thank you.
Thank you, Quetzali. And now it is my job and my pleasure to introduce to you someone who I really don't think needs a whole lot of introduction. Barbara Lee has been our mayor since May of this year, and before that, she served as our representative in Congress for something like 27 years. Am I getting the numbers right? Yes. And if I can do this introduction a little bit differently, I'd like to say something personal to you, if I may. And that is that you have had a profound impact on my life even before I moved from San Jose to Oakland. Because unlike most Presbyterians, I am a pacifist. And I am writing a book on pacifism right now. And it's hard to be a pacifist in the United States because we are a highly militarized society, a society which equates patriotism and the ability to kill. And I was afraid to talk about my pacifism until I heard your speech on the floor of Congress, in which you were the lone voice objecting to the war in Afghanistan, and you spoke with passion, and you came from a place of deep and profound faith, and I am grateful for that. And that gave me the strength to speak publicly about my commitment to pacifism, something I'm still doing now. And so thank you for that. And our congregation, yes, let's give her a round of applause. Our congregation has taken a commitment to peace, which is born of your speech and even quotes your speech in Congress. So thank you for that. And thank you for bringing that same passion and dedication to the work of making peace in Oakland, the work of restoring pride in our city, helping us to keep our city clean and beautiful and safe. Anyway, thank you. Mary Lee has been hosting listening sessions. And did anyone here attend the listening session, Italian Colors? I believe there was one. I was supposed to ask that question. Thank you for continuing to show up for these listening sessions. Anyway, we're here in a spirit of neighborliness and community and peace to hear our mayor. And so, friends, neighbors, our mayor, Barbara Lee. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, of course, in my faith tradition, I'm giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. Pastor Ben, let me just say, first of all, thank you all for being here this afternoon on a beautiful day here in the town. Pastor Ben, let me also say to you, I had the privilege to worship here during the campaign. And the spirit of this congregation, neighborliness, community, and peace, you don't know what it did in the midst of a very aggressive and very active campaign. And I want to thank you so much for welcoming me here during the midst of the campaign, but also for your leadership and for keeping peace alive. Because when we fight for peace abroad, when we fight for peace throughout our country, we fight for peace right here at home. And that's what this is about. It's about creating peace for every single neighborhood, every single resident here in Oakland. And so thank you so much for your leadership and for coming out today and allowing us to be in this beautiful sanctuary. You know, just a couple of things before we get started. One is public safety is top of mind of everyone in the city, regardless of where you live. And you mentioned coming together for a common cause. Well, I talked about One Oakland. And I believe that fighting for peace in Oakland brings us together. Because everywhere, deep East Oakland, all the way to the border of Berkeley, all the way, this entire region cares about public safety, cares about peace in their neighborhoods. And so it is a unifying issue. But it's also important that we know who's who, what's what, and what we're doing, so that you can understand the strategy of the city. And many of you, I'm sure, voted for Measure NN during last November's election, which set forth a course of public safety, an agenda for Oakland, which called for a comprehensive public safety strategy. It called for us to get to 700 police officers, not enough, but we've got to get there first. Also, it required us to develop and support a comprehensive public safety strategy, which included funding and supporting the Department of Violence Prevention, Ceasefire, and for the first time, we put human trafficking in as a public safety issue, because you all know what devastating unfortunate moral disgrace and a real sense of, for me as a woman, anger about what's taking place with our young girls on the streets here. And so human trafficking has got to be an issue that we address in our overall public safety strategy. And so because of what we're doing, believe it or not, because a lot of people don't feel this because we still have crime like every other city in the country, don't feel that we're on the right track, but I can tell you it's working. And I wanted to bring our wonderful people here in Oakland, our leaders, our grassroots organizers, who are here to make sure you know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we need to know better, because we want to hear from you, but also believe that what this city is doing is representing the aspirations of each and every resident in Oakland, and that is to have peace in our communities. And so I'm very proud of our panelists here, Dr. Joshi, who heads up the Department of Violence Prevention, Barbara Oluwole, who was with OCO, now she's a leader in Faith and Action. Of course, Pastor Hopkins with Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church, who's been on the front lines for so long, probably all of his life and service at Lakeshore with regard to Ceasefire. And our Assistant Chief, Anthony Tedesco and Chief Tedesco has been with us throughout this entire process. We've held, 5 ceasefire teach-ins, 4 or 5, and we're going to continue doing this because it's important that not only here in Oakland we change the narrative, but we've got to change the narrative in the country because we're not sweeping any issue under the rug. We're telling the truth. We engage with you with transparency and accountability, but we want to know what the challenges are, but also what the good news is also. And you all are such a part of that, but we have to communicate directly to you because oftentimes the word doesn't get out, or half the truth gets out, or partial truth, or misinformation and disinformation. So this team is committed to talking directly to residents so that you can hear from us directly and know exactly what your city is doing. And hopefully you'll leave here knowing that at least your city's working for you. And we want to make sure that the quality of life and what every single resident deserves here in Oakland is recognized and is adhered to and is as part of every single city official in this city. So thank you all again very much. May there be peace in the world and in Oakland. Thank you.
I've really been enjoying these ceasefire teach-ins, and every single one we've been at, I've met amazing Oaklanders that I've never met before, and at every single one, I see folks that I've known for 25 to 30 years. So there's some folks in here. There's a retired Alameda County judge that I see in here. You didn't think I knew you. I see Glenn Upshaw, raise your hand. Known you for 25 years. He's been in the gun violence prevention world for a very long time. I see a school board member. I see folks. So I'm Holly Joshi. I am obviously an Oaklander. My family has been here since 1949. And we've been through some things here in Oakland, right? I mean, all of us that have been here for decades, all of us that have even just been here for the past few years, those of us that lived through the pandemic, those of us that lived through the rise in violence associated with the pandemic, those of us that just lived through all of the leadership transitions at the city. Thank you for continuing to believe in Oakland. Thank you for taking your time to be with us here today. Thank you for your faith in us. And of course, we're all hopeful now because of Mayor Barbara Lee, right? So I worked for the city from 2001 until 2015 at the Oakland Police Department and left for 10 years to run community-based organizations and was asked to come back 18 months ago. And the reason I said yes, mainly, of course, love working with all these amazing people, but it was about this particular strategy, ceasefire. Ceasefire is known as ceasefire in Oakland. Around the country, it's known as the Focused Deterrence, Gun Violence, and Intervention Strategy. And it was first brought to Oakland in 2012. So you had just come in when we were getting started and really figuring it out. But it had been in Boston, it had been in Chicago. You all may have heard of the Boston Miracle. It had been around, and the community came to the city and demanded that we look at it and implement something similar. They wanted a gun violence prevention and intervention strategy that was community-driven, that centered a social services response and an offer of support, and that utilized the police department resources very surgically. And of course, all of those things are in alignment with Oakland values. So we implemented the strategy very well with fidelity from 2012 to 2019, and we had independent evaluators come in and say that the strategy was responsible for very significant reductions in violent crime. We had a 50% reduction in violent crime during those years that we were implementing the model with fidelity, and then we essentially walked away from the strategy. COVID happened and everything went wild, and we got pulled in a bunch of different directions, and then we had corresponding surges in violence. And yes, the country experienced surges in violence during the pandemic, but not like Oakland, right? We're always suffering the most when things go awry, and that was the case. And once things started to go back down and level out in 2022, we did not get the benefit of those reductions, and we stayed very high through 2023. And then we brought in the California Partnerships for Safe Communities to look at, number one, What is happening with violence? So we call that a problem analysis. Can you please tell us what's going on with gun violence in this city? And then let us know, based on what you find out, if the ceasefire strategy should still be working. And they said, your gun violence, the drivers of gun violence in this city have not changed that much, and the strategy should be working. So let us take a look at the strategy, and that is what they spent months in 2023 doing. And we got the report and recommendations from them at the end of 2023, and we began working on those very quickly. Both Department of Violence Prevention and the police department re-implemented the strategy in the first quarter of 2024 and immediately started to see violent crime go down. So what exactly are the core components of this strategy? It really is about our true belief. It is based on a premise that most people that are trapped in cycles of violence want a way out. So as long as we all believe that most people trapped in cycles of violence want a way out, then we're all on the same page to start with ceasefire, because that really is what the strategy believes. And so to that end, the strategy directly communicates with those folks that have been identified through deep data dives and intelligence gathering from both the police department side and the community side to identify the gangs and groups and individuals that are most responsible for driving violent crime in this city. And when we mean most responsible for driving violent crime in the city, we're talking about in the immediacy. There's a lot of prevention programs. Those are also important. Ceasefire is an intervention program, meaning it's not upstream. It's not focusing on people that might get involved in gangs and groups in 5 years from now. It is looking at those individuals that are most tied to violence that is happening now and that we believe are going to continue to engage by either driving or drawing gun violence in the next 90 days. So it's an intensive intervention. And the first step, as I've outlined, is the deep dive into data and evidence and the identification through crime mapping, shooting reviews, and conflict mapping so that we understand what are the root causes and who are the people involved. From that point, 2 lists are essentially created. There's one list that the police department keeps, and that is a list of folks that we believe are driving violence that the police department is confident that they can build probable cause on fairly quickly. So it's not a program that takes away police power or tells law enforcement to not do their job. They go after the individuals that they can go after. And then list B is really important because we all know that policing and public safety doesn't happen like it happens on Law and Order. So we don't get fingerprints and ballistics back in 20 minutes before the show's over. And so list B are the people that we believe are responsible or very involved in violent crime, but we are not confident that we can get probable cause on. In the past, pre-ceasefire, that list would just linger until the police department could build probable cause, and to be quite frank, sometimes until people were killed. Because if you have intelligence that people are at risk of being involved in violence, that also means that they're vulnerable to being victimized by violence. Victim and suspect, perpetrator and victim, most oftentimes when you're talking about gang and group and gun violence, are the same folks. And so the vulnerability was not addressed. And so now what happens every single week when we walk into a meeting together, run by the mayor's office, is that the Department of Violence Prevention, which is the City of Oakland's social services arm, gets list B. And we get to relentlessly pursue those individuals. And my colleagues will talk a little bit more into depth about what that first initial, what we call custom notification or call in, but a direct communication with those individuals, letting them know that they're on our radar and we really want to offer help. That occurs. Once the direct communication happens, our number one mission is to connect those individuals with services and supports. And those services and supports live within the Department of Violence Prevention. I have a team of 60 people, a deployable resource of case managers, violence interrupters, street outreach workers, and gender-based violence specialists that are there solely to work with the most at-risk populations in Oakland. We have a credible messenger model, so I'm hiring people that have lived experience of violence themselves, folks that are from Oakland, folks that have been involved in the criminal justice system. They're at least 10 years removed from that, so they act as living and breathing examples that you can get on the other side of violence. And of course, for those individuals that do not decide to put the gun down, those individuals that decide to continue to engage in violence, the Oakland Police Department steps in and continues to do their job. So I think the most important things for today is that ceasefire really is a studied, evidence-based strategy. It's been studied across the nation, and it's been studied specifically in Oakland, because I'm from Oakland and I know how we are. We're like, okay, you did this in Chicago, what did you do in Oakland? So the independent review that came from the University of Pennsylvania looked at Oakland ceasefire specifically, and again said that as long as you implement the strategy with fidelity, you will experience reductions. It is in alignment with Oakland values of a holistic, comprehensive approach that the mayor spoke about. We want to offer people chances. We're a second and third chance place. We believe in people's ability to redeem themselves. We believe in people's capacity to heal, and that is what Ceasefire does. It offers many individuals the opportunity to do that. The other thing is to know that Ceasefire very much reduces the imprint of law enforcement and the footprint of law enforcement in our communities because it is intelligence-driven. You're not deploying a resource all over a community. You're focusing the resource. And it's very much about, again, offering those 250 to 350 people that are driving violence at any given time, it's that small of a number, the off-ramps to do better. And so with that being said, I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Barbara to talk about the origins and the community-driven work that it took us to get here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start telling you my story, I want to give you a prayer. I have a friend who is a double amputee, and he sends me a prayer every day. And I just want to share the prayer he sent today because it's for the end of July and for going into August. So I just want to share it with you. It's Thursday, July 31st, 2025. Dear God, bless my last day of July with miracles and blessings. Help me walk into the month of August with a better approach, mind, and attitude. I pray today you do the impossible in my life and others. Heal bodies, change lives, and turn situations around. And the last one is one of the biggest things we need to happen, right, in this country, in our city, is turning things around. And I feel like what we're doing, coming here and talking about ceasefire, and my hope is that we are going to be together turning things around. Before I tell you my story, I want to ask you something. Raise your hand if you've lost anyone to gun violence, someone you know personally, a friend of a friend. Yeah, almost every hand is raised. You're not alone. This pain is shared in so many homes across our city and across our country. My name is Barbara Lafitte Oluwole, and I'm a District 3 resident for over 40 years. And I've been a leader with Faith in Action East Bay, formerly known as Oakland Community Organizations, for over 20 years. My husband Olu and I joined because we were tired. We were tired of sitting on the sidelines while our communities struggled with violence and despair and neglect. And we wanted to be with others who believe change is possible. But nothing prepared us for what happened on June 14th, 2003. That was the day our younger son, Tokumbo, we called him Tokes, was celebrating his 22nd birthday with some friends. And suddenly, a man approached his car and opened fire with an assault weapon. An assault weapon in the streets of Oakland. It was a retaliatory shooting. He had done nothing wrong. He was simply there when a neighbor got shot weeks earlier. He died instantly. Let me ask you another question. As a parent, can you imagine getting that call? Just think about it. Can you imagine not being able to hold your child one last time? We never got to say goodbye. And just like that, our baby was gone. Never to hold him in our arms again, never to kiss him goodnight, never to see him alive again. And like so many other families in Oakland, we were traumatized. We're still traumatized. It's been 22 years. And we still experience that pain every day. That kind of pain never fades. But here's the part I want you to really hear. We couldn't sit still. We took our anger and our grief and we turned it into action. We, as people of faith, we knew that God had not abandoned us. Instead, we believed that God was calling us. He called us to be a part of a solution. So we began searching for answers. And together with other community leaders in OCO, now Faith in Action East Bay, we learned about something called the Boston Miracle, a program known as Operation Ceasefire. It had helped reduce youth homicides by over 60% in Boston. So we asked ourselves, and I ask you now, if it worked in Boston, why not in Oakland, right? So we brought leaders from Boston to Oakland, and we listened and we learned. Many of you in this church was a part of that. And then we got to work. In 2006, we launched a local campaign called Lifelines to Healing, inspired by the ceasefire model. And that year, Oakland had 145 homicides. The need was urgent, and the time was now. And let me ask you one more thing. How many of you believe that everyone deserves a second chance? Well, you know that's what ceasefire is all about. Dr. Holly said it, and I believe it. Between 2006 and 2008, we organized thousands of community members around the ceasefire strategy. And in May of 2008, we gathered more than 3,000 people at the Oakland Convention Center. Some of you guys were there too. We stood together, people of faith, families, community leaders, survivors, all united to say, enough is enough. Ceasefire must come to Oakland. We were not just calling out the problem, we were lifting up a solution, a model rooted in community partnership, accountability, and love. Let me tell you why we do this and why it's so important for us to do this. We do this because we believe that those at highest risk for violence are not beyond hope. We believe our children and our neighborhoods are not beyond saving. We believe that through relationship, organizing, and God's power, we can transform violence into peace. And I'm here to tell you that it was those beliefs that gave birth to Oakland Ceasefire. When the ceasefire strategy is implemented and executed correctly, lives are saved. When we stay the course and don't get distracted, those most likely to engage in gun violence find hope. You heard the mayor, you heard Dr. Holly. When shootings go down, homicides go down. And when homicides go down, so do burglaries and robberies. So today I invite you to be a part of this legacy. And some of you who are already a part, I invite you to continue to be a part of this legacy. Join a community night walk, partner with a local organization, tell your story, or simply look someone in the eye and say, you matter. Your life has value. Because a lot of young people are not told that these days. So we have to be vigilant about that. Because when we act together, when we love boldly, and when we refuse to give up on our town, that's when miracles happen. And I want to join you to join me in making these miracles happen. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, all. Pastor Jim Hopkins, Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church. Thank you, Ben and Montclair Presbyterian, for welcoming us this afternoon, and thank you, Montclair. I know many of you participate in the Ceasefire Night Walks, a weekly effort to bring the peace we envision into the community. Thank you to my fellow panelists, to Mayor Lee and Barbara Oz for your profound testimony. A couple of folks from the community I want to recognize from the membership of Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church, Dean Leanne Flesher, the academic dean and professor of Hebrew Bible at the Berkeley School of Theology, and another colleague in Oakland clergy, Calvin Soderstrom from Park Boulevard Presbyterian. Thank you for the good work that you do. I've been pastor at Lakeshore Avenue for almost 37 years now. And when I arrived in Oakland in 1989, the high rate of homicides, the number of young, primarily men, black and brown young men dying on the streets of Oakland was unacceptably high. It's 37 years ago. There was an organization that was formed early in my tenure at Lakeshore, and every Wednesday noon, we would gather at the site of a homicide in Oakland to say no life should go unmourned. Every inch of territory in Oakland is God's territory, sacred territory. It needs to be reclaimed for the good. And we would pray. We would pray for a better day and a better way. And I think some good things happened. But just because we were exercising our faith, and just because we were praying, and just because we were caring, and just because we were showing up, the homicide rate was not going down. We needed a program to match our prayers. We needed a connection to match our caring. And over time, we stopped meeting, but didn't stop caring. And in time, we started to learn something called the Boston Project, the Boston Miracle, an effort where violence was going down, where lives were being saved, where the community was involved, where police were involved, where evidence was being followed. We said, we need something like that in Oakland. And through Faith in Action East Bay and other programs, finally, it arrived, 2012. Essential to the ceasefire model, to the ceasefire philosophy, is honest communication. Honest communication with I think last week Chief Joshi used the term the drivers and drawers of violence. Those 20, 30, 40, 60 young lives, most likely to shoot or be shot. Ceasefire does not buy into the narrative that in cities like Oakland, it's everybody shooting everybody. We can identify those most at risk, and with honest communication, caring communication, direct communication, respectful communication. We can invite change. We do believe that those most involved in the life want a way out. And we do affirm, as people of faith, that each of us are all God's children worthy of that second chance. Let me talk a little bit about the communication forms that are at the heart of the practice of ceasefire. The core driver of ceasefire is direct communications with those at the very highest risk for gun violence. Procedural justice, community values, and deterrence are at work in these communications. As a pastor, I would assert that some biblical principles are involved as well. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." As practitioners of ceasefire, we want to share the truth, believing that truth will not only keep people free, will also keep them alive and free. And there's the invitation. Those that have ears, let them hear. So there are direct communications with the right people in the right way. There's evidence-based risk and opportunity message, and it's done by an alliance of concerned community leaders, civic leaders, victims, survivors, clergy, service providers. Chief Joshi also talked about credible messengers. I'm an old white man. I am not, in and of myself, a credible messenger. I am a credible messenger only to the extent that I am in connection with the community, with those who have experienced the things that I have not experienced, those who have the resources to honestly invite people to say, we can make a change. We can offer you the resources to find a way out of this violence that you don't want to be part of. I believe I have a place in that messaging. Just in the background, nodding. Yeah. This person, these people know what they're talking about, and they truly want a better life for you, and they're willing to stand with you in search of that better way, that better day, that better life. Ceasefire probably has fairly direct communications over the course of a year with 250 to 300 people. Many of those communications take the form of what's called custom notification. Custom notifications are a quick tactical tool that's tailored for individuals or groups. Custom notifications are usually used to manage near-term spikes in violence, including conflicts between groups, interrupt retaliatory shooting, and communicate with groups and individuals offering services. Custom notifications take two main forms. The first happens on Mondays at Santa Rita Jail, where a team of us, and I'm usually part of this team, where a Alameda County Sheriff working at the jail, an Alameda County probation officer stationed in the jail, tracking a lot of cases, in daily contact with a lot of the folks there, a representative from Department of Violence Prevention, a life coach, and myself will go into Santa Rita and try to speak directly with, again, primarily young men, occasionally young women, young men who are incarcerated, probably on a gun charge, but are soon to be released into the community, going back home. Good news, right? but a very fearful, nervous time. How's it going to go back into a place where I knew so much risk and have seen so much pain? And the direct, honest, caring communication will be, we're not here to threaten. We recognize, though, that there's reason to be worried. How's it going to go for you when you return back home? Wouldn't it be a help? Wouldn't it be a benefit, says the life coach from the Department of Violence Prevention, if you were meeting daily with one of our life coaches, you were provided with resources for job training, for education, for finding a better way. Maybe even we're going to help you move to a location 60 miles away, some way to help you find a different life. And this life coach, who's been there, who is a credible messenger, will say, this is my phone number. Call me. Call me tonight between 7 and 9. And we'll talk further about what's going to happen and how we can maybe meet you at court if you have a court date. And we can connect you directly with one of our life coaches who is going to stand with you, who is going to be relentless in the pursuit of a relationship with you. And it's going to help you find that better way. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to have some support, some direction, some resource. The other form of direct communication, of custom notifications, happens in the community most Tuesdays and Wednesdays between 11 and 2. Get a list of folks that are at risk. Maybe there's been a shooting, there's a risk of some retaliation. Maybe someone has been shot and has come back home. And with a police officer or a representative of the Alameda County Probation Department and a community member and a life coach, we'll have a list of 6 or 7 addresses, and we'll pull up and knock on doors. And if someone answers the door, they don't always. If someone answers the door, the police officer or the representative from the probation department will say, hey, no one's in trouble, but we're here. We're here to talk with Jim. Is Jim here? Sometimes he is. Sometimes he isn't. Sometimes he is, but they're not saying that he is. But we don't want to talk to him. We're here from the Department of Violence Prevention, and Pastor Hopkins is here to say we're not lying, we're credible, and that if this doesn't go well, there'll be accountability. They call me an accountability partner. Basically means that if they offer something, it's a real offer. And again, the life coach will say, hey, we'd really like to talk to you about some services. We'd really like to talk to you about maybe some job training, some education. And we'll put some money in your pocket. We'll put a gift card in your pocket just for showing up. And I'm just amazed at the credibility that these life coaches bring. And I'm honored to be a old white head nodding in the background saying, yeah, this is real. The other form of direct communication is called the call-ins. And that's where we're about 12 to 18 young men who are at some risk are invited to come to a church hall. Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church. First Presbyterian Church also hosts from time to time, or a park. And to sit around tables with a young man from the community, someone from the Department of Violence Prevention, a young man, someone from the Alameda County DA Department, a young man and a service provider, a young man and a victim of violence, a young man and someone from the feds. I'll start those call-ins, Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church. I'll stand up and say, hey, welcome everybody. Pastor Jim Hopkins, pastor here at Lakeshore Avenue Baptist Church. Welcome to my spiritual home. We want it to be a house of prayer and a place of peace for all people. We've been doing work in this community for 165 years. That means there's been a lot of baptisms, a lot of weddings, a lot of funerals, a lot of sermons, a lot of Sunday school classes, a lot of chicken, a lot of potato salad. But tonight might be some of the most important work we've ever done, because tonight we want to talk about keeping you and those you love alive and free. And I just hope you'll listen in on the message this evening. And now I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to be praying. Now my eyes are going to be open, but make no mistake, I'm going to be praying that in this sacred moment you have ears to hear an invitation that might keep you alive and free. And then the community members will begin to talk. Ministers will talk about shootings in front of their church. Barbara and others will talk about losing family members. Someone from Highland Hospital will talk about what happens when a shooting victim comes in and how not everyone dies, but some lay there paralyzed, unable to communicate except by clicking their tongues. And the DA will talk about how he doesn't want to see them on his list in a courtroom. And the federal prosecutor will give the same message. And the police will say, we can't arrest our way out of the violence problem, but please take the services that are offered. And then the law enforcement will clear out, and it'll be just the young men and the service providers with an invitation to give us an accurate phone number so we can call you tomorrow and talk about the services, talk about life coaching that will help you find a better day and a better way. I've been in Oakland for a long time. But ceasefire is, to me, clearly one of the most direct examples of what I believe in. That every life is valuable, that God can make a change in the most desperate of circumstances. And when the community comes together, people can be alive and free. What do I believe in? I believe in ceasefire. Amen.
Good afternoon. I'm Anthony Tedesco with the Oakland Police Department, and I want to start by saying how honored and humbled I am to be a panelist with this amazing group. I've been with the Oakland Police Department for about 20 years. Started in the police academy in 2005, and in 2006 I went into the patrol. The year that you heard about earlier. It was an especially challenging year. We had 145 homicides. And I remember witnessing the hard work of the men and women of the Oakland Police Department and of the other city departments, but I could see that we were siloed, that we were working in our own places, and that there was an opportunity to do more. There must be a better way. And then in 2012, I had the opportunity to work with a team that would eventually be the Ceasefire Division in the Oakland Police Department. And as I studied the strategy, I learned the core principle, I read the material, I met with practitioners, I understood that there were some core concepts that I think have been critical for me in understanding. If you want to affect those that are driving and drawing violence, you need to tell them to stop, you need to help them to stop, and you need to hold them accountable if they don't stop. These are simple but powerful ideas. Telling someone to stop, it's a basic starting point, but it requires you to know who to talk to. It means that we have to take the time to invest in gathering the data, looking at the evidence so that we can reach the right people. That offer of help, it has to be real. And I can assure you, working with this group, that offer of help is real, and it's critical to the success of this strategy. At the same time, there are those that, despite the offering of help, will continue in violence. And for those, we have to bring accountability. This isn't as simple as flipping a switch. The strategy is based on partnership, based on collaboration between the police department, the city, the community, and that trust has to be built, has to be earned in order for this partnership to work. Part of the reason that we lost ground in 2020 at the time of the pandemic is because we were physically pushed back into our silos, unable to meet in person, and this work really can't be done remotely. It took us too long to come back, but we are back, and I'm thankful for that. It also takes time within the police department to build the skills of these teams. It's critical in order to be successful that we gather the evidence, that we meet the standard of proof, and that we solve the cases that will bring accountability. This data-driven and evidence-based process, it leads to greater precision. That precision, it minimizes our community footprint. It's a surgical approach designed to stop those who are committing harm, not radiate outwards and cause additional harm. This strategy works. You've heard today that crime is down, and I want to say again, those reductions are real. Homicides, assaults with a firearm, down 30%. Those are on top of the reductions from last year. And as you've heard, when we stop violence, when we reduce those violent crimes, other crimes are reduced. Robbery is down 41% this year, on top of the reductions from last year. That's over 700 people fewer that were robbed this year. That is an incredible testament to the efficacy of this strategy. I want to end by telling you that the police department is committed to this strategy. We're committed to this partnership. It works, and the results are real. Thank you.
We have an opportunity to ask our panel some questions, and some of you have already given me questions. But if it's okay, I'd like to ask the first question. I've been looking at my thing here, and one of the questions here is, I think in the spirit of our neighborliness, and that is, what are the volunteer activities that are specifically related to violence reduction? How can people get involved in this work? And I don't know if that's something for, well, I don't know which one you would like to do it. Barbara, is that you? Okay.
So we have the Ceasefire night walks, and you all, I think, were given a flyer. And Faith in Action East Bay, we have a public safety committee that anyone's invited to become a part of. We also do actions in the community around, and as far as I'm concerned, grime breeds crime. We work around illegal dumping and immigration, and all of those issues come to bear with the ceasefire model as well. So Faith in Action East Bay is open to all individuals. You don't have to be a part of any congregation or anything to be a part of Faith in Action East Bay. And then we have the sex trafficking work that we're doing in the San Antonio as well.
One ways that volunteers and congregations can be involved in supporting the ceasefire work is through the provision of some resources. Just an example. Yesterday, a text came out from one of the life coaches saying, hey, we're trying to resettle one of the Ceasefire clients in a new apartment, and they need bedding and cookware, and, can your congregation put in a couple $100? Can you buy the pans and you buy the blankets? For congregations to be on that list of resource providers, sometimes it's meals at Christmas, sometimes just provision of things like diapers. But for your congregation to be in touch with the Department of Violence Prevention so the caseworkers know congregations they can turn to for resources when resources are needed.
Someone is asked about the Lifelines program, which, Barbara, I believe you mentioned. And how did it come to be, and will you tell us about how it became so robust in 2025? Do you have any comment on the Lifelines? Maybe that's Dr. Joshi?
Lifelines?
Yeah.
Oh, Lifeline is what in Oakland is what we call the social services part of Ceasefire. So it's actually Ceasefire Lifeline. I know that Miss Barbara was also speaking about Lifeline, but for my part, I'll just tell you that we came up with the name because we wanted this new iteration of Ceasefire to really highlight the fact that there are two main prongs, which is the law enforcement, accountability, enforcement side of the equation. And then there's the social services, community supports, community-based organizational work. And so for the Lifeline side, we have two main positions in the DVP that work on Ceasefire. And that is the violence interrupters, or the outreach workers. And as you heard Pastor Hopkins talk about, I have a violence interrupter that sits on the direct communications team with probation, with the faith-based community, with OPD, and they go out together to do that initial communication. And of course, the main point of that initial communication is to ask them to stop, as Chief Tedesco said, is to let them know that you are on our radar and we know that you're involved and you're vulnerable, and to ask them to stop. And then the second most important part of that communication is to offer the supports and services. And those supports and services have to be real. And so the violence interrupter who is in the field or in the jailhouse having the conversation is wanting to connect that individual to what we call a life coach. I know it sounds very Bay Area, a life coach. It's an intensive case manager, and the reason we wanted it to be called a life coach is twofold. Number one, many of our clients have been case managed their entire lives. Social workers, parole officers, probation officer, et cetera, and we didn't want to have that connotation. And because we really wanted it to emphasize that this is client-driven. It's not system-driven, and so we really do individualized supports for each client. We do a life map within 45 days of the client being on our caseload, and it's a client-driven life map because we know that there are shared drivers of violence, clearly, particularly historical oppression, lockout of school systems, family trauma, PTSD, et cetera. And then there's individual drivers of violence. What is happening in this individual person's life that is pushing them towards being involved in gang and group violence? Is it lack of employment, lack of education, lack of safe housing? What exactly is it? And so our job and the life coach's job is really to come up with an individualized client support system. And it's a very intensive support model. So you've heard us say it's 250 to 350 people. So a little bit of people, a lot of bit of service. And the life coaches work with the clients every single day. They're required to talk to their clients every single day and to see them at least 2 to 3 times a week in person for 12 to 18 months. And when we talk about what are the big 3 in terms of Lifeline support, of course, you won't be surprised, it's housing, employment, and healing services and supports, whatever those may look like for that individualized client. It may be trauma therapy, it may be somatics, it may be some type of rehab, substance use issues, but those are really the big 3 that we're most oftentimes fighting for our clients to have access to. And as was mentioned, housing can really look different for all different types of clients, but we're usually trying to figure out increased housing stability and safety, and it can be moving them out of a particular neighborhood, but sometimes it's moving them completely out of Oakland. We just had a client 2 weeks ago that was only 16 years old, who was at extreme risk for being shot and killed. His cousin was killed last year when he was 16 years old. And it took us about 2 months to convince the mom how serious the situation was. And when we finally convinced her, it was a whole family relocation. It's the mom, a 7-year-old, and the 16-year-old completely out of the state. So those are the big three. Lifeline, in the context that we use it now in Oakland in 2025, really is to represent the social services side of the ceasefire strategy.
Does Ceasefire incorporate any arts-based approaches? I mean, the question of somebody who works with an arts organization called Visioning Beyond Violence and wonders if there's any arts, use of arts, might add music or any kind of other kind of humanities approaches that are used in the program.
That is such a great question and something I think we really need to take hold of and do better at. But we do contract with 21 community-based organizations out of the Department of Violence Prevention. So $13 million, thank you, Measure NN, for continuing that. But $13 million gets pushed out each year to over 20 community-based organizations who also provide an ecosystem of supports for our clients. And some of them do music and some arts therapy, but in terms of it being a core part of the program, it's not, and it should be. So thank you for raising that question.
So now a question is, what efforts are being made to address kind of the root causes or the drivers of crime, things like poverty, lack of employment opportunities, poor education, broken families, etc. How are those being addressed as part of the broader strategy? Someone's asking. I don't know who's wants. Mir, do you want it?
Well, so much part of what we're talking about today and what Ceasefire and Department of Violence Prevention and the Police Department are about really are looking at what are the social determinants of violence. That means living in poverty, food insecurity, abuse, lack of educational opportunities, dropout. You look at the dropout rates. You look at racial inequity and economic inequality. All of those social determinants are what the government, our city government, our state and federal government should be addressing. And so we have to, and being a mayor requires me to look at each department, Department of Public Works, the Housing Department, Economic Development, to look at how we integrate policies and funding priorities that take into account all of the life experiences of our targeted population. And that's a heavy lift because we have budget challenges, of course. There's been years of disinvestment in these individuals and in the communities. When you look at the maps here in Oakland, when you look at where people live who end up in this other world, there's a clear line. And so these social determinants and these quality of life issues are issues that the city must address, and we have to find a way to address them given the budget deficit and our challenges of the budget. But I can assure you that those are our priorities, and it's a quality of life for everyone in this city, which means we have to address all of these social determinants within the city departments.
The next question I have is probably for you, Chief Tedesco, or perhaps for you, Mayor Lee. And it asks about staffing of the police department. The question is specifically, how are you going to enforce the threat of prison to people who start shooting when there are so few police on the streets? And I don't know which of the two of you or 5 of you would like to address that. Yeah, good call.
Well, I'd like to focus in on what I know that we can do. Because of my experience both as an officer in the ceasefire section, as a supervisor and the commander of that unit for some time. It's a precision-based strategy, and it takes a lot of time to train up those officers to build the skills necessary to do the investigations, the effective investigations that can hold those that continue to cause harm accountable. And that's critical. And with a strong relationship with the district attorney's office, we can do that. And the good news is that it's not a high volume. There aren't thousands of people driving violence. As you've heard today, 250 to 350 people. And so if we stay focused on that group and we stay true to following the data and building the evidence, we can be successful with that group. And what we've seen then is that reverberates out into other crime types, because persons that are causing harm, driving violence, picking up guns, they're often involved in other types of crimes, such as auto burglaries or robberies. So if we can do the investigation, present a case, evidence-based case to the district attorney's office that can hold the person accountable, then we can reduce other crimes as well. I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Sure, and it's no secret that we have a challenged budget, which impacts, of course, the number of police officers, which we have. Again, Measure NN required us to get to 700. We're trying to get to 700. But in the meantime, what is working is a variety of public safety strategies that involve non-sworn security officers, such as our ambassadors. Police need to be freed up to police. We have a variety of strategies, and we were able to put another $1 million into our ambassador program, where in various communities, specifically where there are business improvement districts, we have, such as in Temescal, the crime rate has been reduced by about 41% since we've had the non-sworn police, not force, but ambassadors in the community. So we're trying to build that out throughout the city, because until we get to what we need, which is probably over 700, we're going to have to all hands on deck in the community with non-sworn ambassadors. But also we have now, 5 academies that will be starting very soon. But one of the challenges we have here in Oakland is recruitment, because cities such as Alameda can provide a $75,000 signing bonus. And so jurisdictions around us have more incentives to join the force, to go into the academies. And so that's another challenge that we're addressing by recruiting, trying to find new ways to recruit from within Oakland, because there's so many young people who, if they had the opportunity, would want to stay at home, would want to be a police officer, male or female, within the city. So this has to do with recruiting, it has to do with the budget, and it has to do with how we, which we're doing, prevent crimes from happening, but we still need a police force. And so that's kind of a strategy that we all have embarked upon to keep the entire city safe, but also to deal with the underlying root causes of crime.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the relationship, Dr. Dollar, to macro and your department?
Yeah.
Sure. Her question was, what's the relationship between the Department of Violence Prevention and macro? The relationship really is very, very loose and very informal, because most oftentimes we really are working with different populations. And macro is not set up, as I think many of you know, to deal directly with incidents of violence, and we are. And so we're really focusing on public safety, but macro is focusing on more of the mental health side of the equation, and also mental health incidents that have not reached a crisis level that would necessitate a police response, right? So I think that macro is a really, really important arm of our public safety strategy, but very much focus on mental health crisis with folks who are in need of shelter or in need of, an intervention like a 5150 or a ride to John George or a voluntary commitment or something of that nature. If it has an intersection of mental health and violence, then that is going to be the Oakland Police Department, for sure. And Department of Violence Prevention, obviously, as well, working on violence. But I don't know if the mayor wants to say anything more about macro specifically.
One example, which I handle a lot of cases. I'm a social worker by profession, so I do casework. And people call me, and there was an individual, who was on the streets, unsheltered, and people were about ready to call the police. And I said, hold on just a minute, let me make an assessment of what's going on. And I did. And this person was mentally challenged, did not need to make a call to the neighborhood did not need to call the police, they needed to call macro because this person was seriously having a mental health breakdown, a psychotic breakdown. And so we got macro out there right away. So instead of the police having to come to pick up this person, macro did. We got this individual into services, into treatment, and what have you. So that's how it's supposed to function. We need to have a reset with macro because we need more of a streamlined system. We need more, you call 311 and there needs to be more information about macro, but also we need to build it out more because I think that we have a very good macro in place, but a lot of residents don't know when to call macro, when not to call macro, so we've got to mount a public information campaign also on macro.
Okay, thank you all. Mindful of the time, I want to move. First of all, let's give our panel a round of applause. There's a moment in the life of someone who facilitates these kinds of events where one might look at one's note and realize that one doesn't know what they mean. So there's a note here which says, special acknowledgments, and the name Barbara. I'm aware that there are two people named Barbara to my right. I don't know which one of you was planning to do the special acknowledgments. Both of you, yes, anyway. Yeah.
Protocol observed.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I hope that you realize and heard that your public servants, whether they're paid or not, whether they're volunteer or not, are on the job. And I hope that we've given you enough information for you to be able to spread the word because it's so important to have you all as trusted messengers in this city. And when you hear of issues that concern you, please call and ask for clarification like the macro issue I just mentioned. But I'm hopeful that we continue this engagement, that you work with Ceasefire, or there are many other efforts that the city is mounting, like Keep the Town Clean, for example. We're paying young people stipends to go out, and I go out with them on the weekends, and we're cleaning up blight. And so there are many, many efforts that we're engaged in because I'm determined that this city is going to be the cleanest, the safest, and the greenest, and the most peaceful city in the country. So thank you all very much.
Friends, I want to say thank you again for coming. And my prayer for you is that you will go from this place and see the beauty that surrounds us, see the beauty that is within us, see the beauty that we may give to one another as gifts of grace. Friends, be blessed, be filled with joy, be filled with hope. Amen. Thank you.